You really want to get into necessary trouble, we'll let you know how to do that. Okay. Um, at this time, we're going to go ahead and start the meeting. And I would like to ask Becky Butler to review the agenda and to provide the context for our meeting, which is going to include an analysis of what happened and what now. Becky, take it away.
Thank you, PJ. And I want to echo PJ's thanks to the new folks who are on here. And what I said to a couple of the new folks that were on early is that I am very aware that lots of new folks are coming in, eager to see what they can do, just as as many of us in necessary trouble are about to keel over. So what you will see today is you will see a really good overview of how we think things look right now. You'll hear from the wonderful candidates that we supported this year, and you'll get a very good sense of the work we have done in the last year. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And we also really want to encourage folks to use the chat. Just use it generously. Feel free to comment, to ask questions. And here we go. So, so as PJ was saying, so we have really three chunks today. And the first is what happened and what now. That's something that we could spend days and weeks talking about it. We're not going to do that. We're going to talk about that for about 15 or 20 minutes. We're then going to hear from our wonderful and much loved candidates that we supported this year. And then we're going to hear from both about and from our wonderful Troubler volunteers that have worked their hearts out this year. What the work looked like, what we accomplished, and hear from some of the folks about what was particularly impactful for them about that participation. So let me start. And for those of you, and let me also say something about this first piece. This first piece, I want to give a big shout out to Karen McCowan, who was my partner in crime in putting together a lot of the data. For those of you who hate data, we hope this will not be too much. For those of you who love data, it probably will not be enough. So we're just going to do the best we can here. So let's talk about just what happened. And a lot of this is going to be obviously not good news, but let me promise you that there are some really important pieces of good news buried in it, and we are going to amplify those. So what happened? Downsides. 90% of all counties in the US swung right. And Trump obviously won all the swing states. And if you look at the box, you can see this is only 5 of the swing states, but they all looked similar, that they all swung from being blue to further red. It's a little overwhelming when you look at it. So then we look at, okay, well, how did the groups, where did that shift come from? What were the groups, what was the shift between 2020 and 2024? And when you look at this screen, this slide, I want to call your attention to the bottom right in the red. Among white men and white women, Trump lost a little bit. Black men and black women, Trump either gained a tiny bit or lost. And then you get to Hispanic Latino men, and Trump in that category gained 18 points, which is pretty astonishing. Among Hispanic Latino women, Trump gained 7%, also a pretty significant jump. There is a category in the self-reporting of race that is other, and that can be Asian American Pacific Islander, it can be biracial, it can be other forms of identification. Among people who identified in that other category, Trump gained 12%, and among first-time voters, Trump gained 20%. Okay, so those were the significant trends and shifts between 2020 and 2024. And then, so if we look at all of this, right, if we look at all the Trump support, the term that Karen used to describe it was a mile wide, but very shallow. This was not a rout. This was not a mandate. This was not an overwhelming win. This was actually a very, very close race, even if he ended up with the presidency, the Senate, and the House. The margins are very small. And let me also say that there are still races that are being finally counted. And so all of these numbers are projected numbers, but they're pretty safe projected numbers. So what you can see in this second line here, right, is that Trump won 49, is projected to win 49.9%, Harris 48.4%. That means that Trump's projected win is only roughly 1.5%. That is very close. That's essentially the same as what the third party ended up getting. It is not an astonishing number. It is tight. It's also, I think, important to notice that that is less than 50% of the popular vote, right? It's less than 50% of the popular vote. And when you look at the numbers, when you look at the numbers of all the eligible voters, the percentage of those that voted for Trump is only 32%. It is not a rout, okay? And when I saw these numbers, it was helpful to me because it made me, frankly, feel a little less alienated in my own country. It is not that everybody but me that's walking around in the world voted for Trump. These were not huge numbers. Especially in looking at the right-hand side, especially in the House, the GOP is going to have a very thin majority. And it's getting even thinner because he's tapped a couple of those House representatives to be in his administration. And those seats could be empty for a little while. So he certainly has the trifecta, but he doesn't have a lot of leeway. And it means that they're going to have to keep all their numbers, all their folks voting in line, which historically they've had a little bit of trouble with. So it is not as overwhelming as it might seem. This is another, I think, important slide because what it shows is it shows the number of electoral votes for each presidential race. And if you want to look at a mandate, look at 1980 or 1984, where there was Reagan, right? That's a mandate. Those are big, big, big numbers. Even 92 and 96 with Clinton were big numbers. 2016, 2024, Trump's numbers are not huge numbers. This is not a mandate. A few additional notes about the national vote, which I think are important to notice. Roughly 94% of each party voted along party lines. So what this election did not reflect is it did not reflect some massive Democratic defection. We didn't have massive numbers across the party leaving the Democratic Party to become Republicans. That is not what happened. Trump he got 2 million more votes than the number he got when he lost in 2020, not a huge number. Harris, meanwhile, got 5 million fewer votes than Biden, which is almost looking like exactly the number of votes that did not, the number of voters that did not vote in 2024. So there were 5 million fewer total voters in 2024 than in 2020, and that is really important. We had 5 million voters that voted in 2024 and that stayed home in 2020, that voted in 2020 that stayed home in 2024. What this means overall is that there were some key voter shifts to the right. Right? Absolutely. Some key voter shifts to the right. There was also significantly lower Democratic turnout. And all taken, what this means is that Trump did not dramatically, significantly, overwhelmingly grow his base. It's that Harris lost some of Biden's base. And this feels really important as we go forward, and feels really important in terms of how we think about this election and how we think about what we do going forward. So that was all national. Let me say something about Georgia. So what happened in Georgia? So as a reminder, in 2020, Biden won by roughly 12,000 votes. In 2024, Trump won by 120,000 votes. In Georgia, we had about 85% of the counties in Georgia which shifted red. And on the map, you can see that some of those northern suburbs shifted a little bit to the left. When you look at the numbers and the turnout in all the counties, Trump improved his share, right? Improved the turnout in the red rural counties, and he managed to shave some of the voters in our big urban blue counties. And this was something actually that you could kind of see starting to happen in early voting, is that the turnout in some of those red counties was just overwhelming. So the turnout in our 29 Democratic majority counties was about 4% lower than in the 130 GOP majority counties. And 4% isn't a lot, right? But 4% isn't a lot. But when you take it over all those counties, it added up. And this is why we say that that his win was very, very wide, but not very, very deep. Other notes about Georgia. The Democrats had a net gain of 2 state house seats, which puts us right now, we have 80 seats compared to the GOP having 100. This is not what we'd hoped. We had hoped to pick up more seats, no two ways about it. But in this environment, at least the fact that we had a net gain is really significant. We were fighting a national current that was really strong. We didn't know it. So it is not what we'd hoped, but I really want to emphasize that it was really important that we had a net gain. A little note to say about turnout. The swing states, right, where so much work was going on, had a turnout that was significantly better than the national turnout. So all that work made a difference. And Georgia in particular performed a little better in terms of turnout than other swing states. And this feels really important to recognize, especially for those of you and those of us who have been working our hearts out, right? It was not for nothing. It was not for nothing. The turnout, those efforts did show up in the turnout numbers for Georgia. Our wonderful Susie Greenberg, who is with us today, did not prevail, sadly, but ran a heck of a good race. And still, it's really only that 2-point swing. So we are still so close in that county, in that district. We are still so close. And also our wonderful Jasmine Clark did win and she was reelected very happily by 7.5%, which is actually 3.5% more than in 2020, despite having a target on her back with Kemp's money pouring into her opposition, and despite redistricting, which made her district more difficult to win. So again, all the work did make a difference. So the $10 million question of why. And I want to just go over all those reasons because there are lots of different ways to look at this election. And first and foremost, I'm going to just make a lot of room for racism and misogyny. And that is not just because Kamala Harris did not prevail, but that she did not prevail against a campaign that was as assaultive, as offensive, as appalling as Trump's campaign. So let's just acknowledge the foundation of racism and misogyny. Let's also acknowledge the massive amount of misinformation on right-wing media and social media. And the understanding that in certain key ways, traditional media abdicated its responsibility. We had a couple of newspapers that, for the very first time, did not endorse. We had many newspapers that treated the campaigns that didn't call out the appalling nature, the anti-democratic nature of Trump, that seemed to hold Kamala Harris to a different standard that was challenging for lots of us to see. And then along the right, there's kind of a different category that has much more to do with economic issues. So Biden and Harris, during that presidency, there were the highest price hikes since Jimmy Carter's presidency, and that was post-COVID inflation. And in every single country, the party in power for that post-COVID inflation has been defeated. Every single country had post-COVID inflation, and the party in power has lost in each of those. And also, there is a lot of acknowledgement right now that the Democratic Party is losing working people of all races. And there is a lot of internal conversation among the Democratic Party, both at the state and the national level, that is being hashed out about what we do about that, about how we can do differently. Finally, for all these reasons, it really appears that what the country wanted was a quote unquote change candidate, and that Kamala Harris had been vice president and couldn't be that change candidate. And so lots of us might look at this list and focus on one of these more than the others, but these are the full range of the large reasons that are emerging for this this kind of, I don't even know the adjective, this heartbreaking loss, and where we find ourselves right now. So, is there any good news buried in the middle of all of this? Yes, there is. So, the first really important piece of good news has to do with a lot of state ballot initiatives. And there were a lot of state ballot initiatives that were about very progressive causes. And where those were on the ballot, in many of those states, they passed. We had 7 states that passed abortion rights measures. We had several states where the minimum wage was increased. And we had several states which finally approved paid sick leave. So these basic issues that are part of what the Democratic Party represents kept passing. And what that has led a number of analysts to believe that along with the economic issues, that the 2024 election was a rejection of the status quo, but it was not necessarily an embrace of fascism. And that, I think, is a really important kind of acknowledgement for us to hold. Because voters over and over again kept voting for progressive causes and at the same time voting for Trump, right? So keeping going, not a GOP mandate, a very, very slim House margins. And I think this last bullet is also very important because we really need to be looking at where we have power. In 2016, when Trump was elected for the first time, the Democrats had trifectas, which is when you have you control the governorship, the state house, and the state senate. In 2016, the Dems had 6 state trifectas. Right now, we have 15. Right? So we ain't nothing. We have got power, and part of our challenge will be figuring out how to use it most effectively. So what now? And let me say something about the what now. I in no way want to underplay the dire nature of this election. I really don't. You know, I have recently been very close to my heart has been the piece of the fact that Nazi Germany went from a multi-party democracy to a dictatorship in 1 year, right? So we know what can happen. We also do not quite know how this is going to unfold. We don't know quite how bad it's going to be. We don't know the pace at which it's going to unfold. We don't know whether the GOP is going to splinter. We really don't know. And how we proceed will be determined by how things begin to unfold. But here's what we do know. Here's what we do know. We know a little bit. We know that the attorneys general and the governors in blue states have been meeting since 2023, preparing for this eventuality, talking about how both to protect the rights of their citizens and how to provide safe harbor and help for red state citizens. And this comes back to those 15 trifectas that the Dems have, right? So this comes back to blue states finding ways to make reproductive rights available for red state citizens who need to take some refuge there. So those blue states are going to be a big source of power and refuge for us. We also know that there are a boatload of judicial appointments that the Senate is currently confirming as fast as they can. So what we anticipate is that they are going to be blasting through those appointments for the next 2 months, and that when Trump takes office, there will be a very few open judicial seats for him to fill. And just as a reminder, we know he owns the Supreme Court, just as a reminder that not all cases end up in the Supreme Court, that a lot of cases get resolved at the appellate court, and those are not all his appointments. We also have some extremely strong and well-resourced national organizations that have been preparing for this eventuality. Democracy Forward, which we had in our last newsletter update, has 800 lawyers on hand and several millions of dollars, and they are ready to take fights to court immediately. We are understanding that the outcome of the 2026 election is kind of a key hinge point for democracy. Our expectation is that lots of Trump voters voted for all kinds of reasons that were not related to any of these things that he's going to do, and that they are going to come as great surprises. And that it is very, very, very likely that in 2026, right, assuming the free elections are still there, that there will be a tremendous backlash. And so 2026 is a key hinge point for the continuation and preservation of democracy, and we are going to need to be working our hearts out to prepare for that. Finally, nationally and in Georgia, our goal, our aim, our strategy is to figure out where we have leverage, right? And sometimes that might be county, sometimes that might be state, and some of it might be blue states on a more national level, and use it like heck to protect democracy and to protect those who will be most targeted. What this will mean for necessary trouble is not absolutely completely clear yet. I want to just say, I'm going to go back to where I started, especially since I know we have some new folks joining us today. Exactly the work that we will be doing at the starting in January of next year is not absolutely clear. We're going to be putting that together in the next couple of months, so we will know a lot more. But all of this data, all of this understanding of the big picture of what happened is going to be informing how we do this. What we know already is that it's going to look really different than what it looked like right after he was elected in 2016. It is much less likely that there will be pussy hats and marches on Washington again, right? It is more likely that it will be strategic, that it will be using the levers of power that will not be federal government power, but other sources of power. It also, one of the things about necessary trouble is we have always focused locally and on the state level. And now more than ever, our focus is going to need to be there. And fortunately, we have some terrific people here, and we will be relying on them and hearing from some of them today. So, for those of you who are new to necessary trouble, I want to echo PJ's. And let me also just one last thing. When the election happened, I thought, oh man, we are going to start seeing unsubscribes from necessary trouble right and left because people are going to be so disheartened. And I mentioned to folks last night that every day we've had 3 or 4 new members sign up. So I am grateful for the new energy. I'm grateful people are going to want to jump in. And starting in the new year, we will have a much clearer idea what we're going to be doing, but it will be continuing our focus at the state and local level and seeing how we can best leverage the democratic power we do have. So thank you for hanging in with all that information. And I am now we're going to transition over to the candidates that we supported this year. And to facilitate that, I'm going to turn this over to Karen Davenport. Karen.
Becky, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that extremely helpful and important information. This afternoon, we're very excited to have candidates that we worked with and supported. And I'm going to share a brief amount of information about each of them and then ask them to sort of share some pertinent perspectives with us about the current election and their thoughts as they went through the process as candidates and perhaps some of their future plans. First of all, Susie Greenberg ran for the State House. She's a mother, a lawyer, a 30-year resident of House District 53. She has really dedicated her life as a volunteer advocating for children and families. She has an extremely rooted background in her Jewish heritage, and her family history is began in 1900s when her Jewish grandparents fled Eastern Europe to escape persecution and violence. Susie ran a great campaign. And I think some of the key issues she was
Yep,
really
time to take your pills again.
out there on.
Carbidopa
Somebody else's. But anyway, she was really such a big advocate for moms demand action, advocating for common sense gun laws. She truly came about that because unfortunately her son was robbed at gunpoint. She was really a big proponent for issues to strengthen our community safety, to improve access to health care. And Susie, I wish you would share with us the experience that you had as a candidate. And I think I would appreciate if you share with us going forward some things you learned and things that keep in mind as we support servant leaders like yourself to help us in our state government.
Well,
Susie?
thank you. Thank you to Necessary Trouble for all that you did. To say you supported me is an understatement. You were a foundational pillar of this campaign, and the trust you put in me was remarkable. I mean, I don't have the exact numbers, but you canvassed for me for months. You wrote probably 4,000 postcards. You did sign wavings. You did an incredible fundraiser for Jasmine and myself, hosted by, not hosted, but with Stacey Abrams as a special guest. So we have the canvassing, the postcards, the signs, the fundraising, the moral support, the logistical support. From time to time, my team did reach out and get some advice, especially on how to phone bank. And really, you were tremendous. I can't thank you enough because you inspired me to keep going. This district, for those of you who are new, is very gerrymandered, and it's physically a difficult district to canvass in. It's over 31 miles long, north to south. It has 3 different cities in it and 3 different, very distinct communities. And so it was a challenge. I can say this. We lost, but that was really probably because of the red wave that went through the nation. We lost 48% to 52%, which was about 1,355 votes. The votes that we didn't get were probably Nikki Haley voters, to be honest. Those are probably the people I could not capture. I got 16,913 votes. Donald Trump got 16,367. So we beat him. Kamala beat him single-handedly. She got 18,799 votes. And Deborah Silcox, the incumbent, who did have the first place on the ballot, got 18,268. She also had incredible support from the governor, the Speaker of the House, and daily the governor was sending out texts saying, support my friend, Deborah Silcox. So against all odds, we ran an incredible race, especially for a first-time candidate. I know the result is disappointing. I'm certainly feeling, I want to figure out where we went wrong, but it looks like I just did not capture the Nikki Haley type voters. We also had the challenge of competing with Kamala Harris's operation for canvassers. And we had a very, very, very hard time finding canvassers, aside from Necessary Trouble, who really took on Buckhead for me. We had a small team from Reproductive Freedom for All and those who I could hire. And that was a real challenge. In the last 3 weeks of the election, even endorsers pulled off their teams to go to Gwinnett County. And so there were many days where it was me and my dad. I mean, and we were like 3 weeks before the election. So everyone wanted Kamala to win, and of course, myself included. And I'm proud to say she did win in 53. So that feels great. So everyone's efforts that you put here were tremendous. A couple other interesting facts about this district and our campaign. It was a grassroots movement. We had over 2,100 individual donors. That's extraordinary. 90% of those donors were individuals. Deborah Silcox, if you were to look at her figures, they're almost exactly opposite. Most of her donors were PACs and lobbyists. 64% of our donors were women. 80% were from the state of Georgia. We sent over 5,000 postcards, somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000. We knocked on 16,600 doors, and we made over 20,000 phone calls. At the end of the day, because we couldn't get canvassers, we wound up paying a service to do phone canvassing for us. And that is how we were able to hit the electorate. Fair Fight did do a canvass for us, and they focused on the apartment communities in 53, and there's not a high concentration of apartments compared to other districts. And those precincts where we had apartments were flipped or to blue, or the lead was, we met all of our marks in the Democratic turnout from 2022. So that was great. I can tell you, you all single-handedly delivered a win for Kamala in 53 in the Buckhead district. So that is amazing. So thank you for everything.
Thank you so much, Susie, for sharing those thoughts. There's a couple of questions in the chat. First of all, kudos to you. Many statements and so much appreciation for you running, and pats on the back for being a first-time candidate. We did want to know if you would consider running again.
I will consider it. We got so close, and we created a tremendous space here as the 4852 designation of voter turnout suggests. So I'm really tired, as many of you are. And I'm going to just table it till the first of the year.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So another question here is, you talked a lot about having the canvassers and paying people to phone bank. After you rest in January, do you think it would be, helpful in talking with us in terms of how much, and I know there was a lot of money that poured into the campaign for your candidate, for the person who was running against you from Kemp and Loeffler. But after you rest, maybe in terms of the people that worked with you, if you have a better idea of how much money it took to actually, run your campaign, and then also, consider the possibility of keeping in touch with the people in your area so that your name and all the things that you stand for to be a servant leader will be continued to be knowledge in their hearts and minds.
Oh, well, I do hope to stay in touch and become a servant leader. I don't intend to give that up by any stretch. That was an incredible accomplishment to get so much name recognition. And in large part, it was because of necessary trouble, especially towards the end, the sign campaign that you all led for me. We bought the signs and you got them out there, and it was like a tsunami, to be honest. It was wonderful. It was a very, very, very expensive race. We wound up raising about $700,000. And I do have some left over. I don't know exactly what that is quite yet, but we'll have something to start with. And I am told they spent $3 million to defend the seat. That's unverified. But they almost every day put out a new video, digital ad against me. They had incredible mail campaign and a texting campaign that the governor ran. For those of you who don't know, the governor's mansion is in this district, and he did not want to lose the area around that premises. And also Kelly Loeffler lives here. There were a lot of many prominent Republicans who really fought hard. And in my opinion, this is one thing I have to struggle with, and I don't have an answer. We could do so much good with that money. You know, it's real tension. Like, you have to spend the money to get a seat at the table. And if you don't, you will not get a seat at the table. But the flip side is, like, this is a lot. It took a lot of effort to raise that kind of money. And so I have to think about all of that.
Well, thank you so much, Susie. Let's give her a round of applause before we go forward. Thank you so much, Susie.
I could not have done it without necessary trouble. I want you to hear that from me. Such gratitude for all of the emotional, financial, and energetic investment everyone gave me. I felt it. So thank you.
You did a fabulous job, and we're very proud.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And now I think we will hear from, let's see who's next on the slide here, Karen.
It's Jasmine.
Yes.
Karen.
Okay, thank you. So most of you, we talked with Jasmine often, and she has been a person at the state who's been fighting for so many things. Jasmine joined the Georgia House of Representatives in 2019, and she was reelected this November 5th. Since Jasmine was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and she lives in Lilburn, Georgia, and she has a background in biological science and a master's degree in microbiology. And a lot of the actions that she has taken since she's been at the Georgia House of Representatives have been in committees on banking, budget and fiscal affairs, House higher education committees, interstate cooperation committees. And, you know, when you are in the minority, the way the Democrats are currently at the state, you know, getting your voice heard and getting information out there is not an easy task, but Jasmine has done it consistently and eloquently, and fighting for so many causes, and bringing her background in science to give accurate information instead of misinformation. So Jasmine is with us today. I don't see her on the screen, but she's going to talk. I hope she's going to share with us a little bit about what her experience was in this election. And then also share, I know she probably needs to rest the month of December, but session will start in January, and just some thoughts with us about how she plans to proceed in January. Jasmine?
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it. Sorry, I am out. I don't know how many of you all are Falcons fans, but the Falcons are playing today. So I'm pulling a little double duty, finally getting an opportunity to, I guess, rest a little bit after what was a grueling campaign. And many of you know that because many of you were there in the, knocking on doors for me, making phone calls for me, seeing, on the ground just what we were up against. This election was interesting. It's my fourth time running for office. It's my third different iteration of a district that has been drawn, because every single time they had an opportunity to redraw the district, they redrew it, trying to make it a bit more competitive. We took on that challenge, and we, said no matter how you draw it, what we're going to do is we're going to still run our race, and we're going to put everything we can into making sure we get our message out there. Similar to Susie's campaign and a lot of the other targeted campaigns, hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent on negative attack ads against me. And so I will not lie and say that it was not a bit nerve-wracking to, endure weeks and weeks of attack ads, weeks and weeks of attack mailers, weeks of attack text messages, polls. They did multiple polls, and each poll said something negative about me in the poll. So a lot of money was spent in this process to try to get me out. But I truly believe that there is power in the ground game. And so that is why I'm always so appreciative of what Necessary Trouble did in this election, where you all knocked thousands of doors for me. You also made thousands of phone calls for me. And those things actually truly do matter. So I want to give you all kind of an idea of just how much they mattered in this race. So going into an election night, what happens is we have data that shows 2 years ago and 4 years ago, so in a midterm election and in a presidential election, how many people voted in that precinct, how many people voted for the Democrat in that precinct, how many people voted for the Republican in that precinct. We don't know who voted for who, but we can say numbers wise, the Democrat got this many votes, the Republican got this many votes. Now, many of these precincts were my precinct in both 2022 and in 2020. So that Democrat was in fact me. But some of them were not my precinct in the last presidential election or in 2022. So there were some where the Democrat was another person, usually Shelley Hutchinson, Representative Shelley Hutchinson, or Representative Karen Bennett. Either way, we have this data. And based on all of our data, we had about 6 red precincts. This included the precinct that they drew in and the precinct that they had originally drawn out that they drew back in. So both of those were considered red precincts, and they were considered red precincts because in 2020 and in 2022, those precincts voted for the Republican. The Republican had more votes than the Democrat had. This was the case pretty much since the first time I ran. And so what we ended up doing in this race, which is something that I still am in awe of, and I can only attribute it to a very strong ground game. Every single precinct except for 2 that we had listed as a red precinct turned blue. Now, some of them turned very light blue, and some of them, where we thought they were going to be very red, they were actually very blue. So we completely shifted the numbers. I only lost 2 precincts. And the 2 precincts that I did not win, the 2 precincts that the Republican got more votes than I did, the Republican got 55 more votes than me and 12 more votes than me. That means we made significant gains, because even in those precincts where we were expecting them to get hundreds of more votes than me, they barely got over the line. So for all intents and purposes, despite being redrawn multiple times, despite them specifically drawing this district to try to draw me out, despite all of those hundreds of thousands of dollars that went into negative ads, despite all of that, you all, we actually won bigger in this election than we have ever run in any other election that we've won, when it comes to how well we did precinct by precinct. And so I think this is not just this year. I think we have created a culture of community as an office. And also during campaign season, we talk to voters, and it works. So what's next? Going into the legislative session, I am preparing to, you know, I'm preparing my legislative agenda now. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be, but it's going to probably be very similar to what it was in the past. We're definitely going to have a focus on reproductive rights, and I'm bringing on a reproductive fellow to come work in my office. She's a student at UGA. Additionally, I am planning on doing healthcare stuff, education stuff, and of course, higher education and climate, and of course, guns. So, all the things that I've done in the past.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. I know I want to ask you one question in terms of your plans for the upcoming legislative session. I know that you do a lot to communicate with your constituents all the time, and I'm curious as to, do you plan to do the same types of things you've done in the past, or do you have some additional ideas? Because from what the research says, the more you talk to people all the time, the better it is when you get ready to run.
So the truth of the matter is, I plan to do the things I've done before, such as town halls and things like that. But also, those are things that require people to come to me. I am going to be a lot more intentional about being present at community events, having booths at parades, having booths at, local markets and festivals and things like that. I also plan to go into the schools more often as well, and really talk to parents and students about what their needs are, and continuing just to do the things I've done, newsletters, being very active on my social media. All of those things are things that I will continue to do, because I have heard from people in my district that those are the things that they feel like they know me, because I show up and they see me. And, they feel like they have the ability to actually communicate with me. So I do want to keep those things up going into this next legislative session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jasmine. And as usual, we know you will keep in touch, and we will continue this connection, because we know you're down there at the Capitol fighting for what is necessary for our families, for our future. And we appreciate it so much. So let's give Jasmine a hand. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jasmine.
Thank you all so much for having me. And I really appreciate this opportunity. And just thank y'all so much for what y'all did for me. Like, I really, truly hope y'all understand just how valuable Necessary Trouble has been to my success. Like, you are an integral part of my success. And I just want to say thank you so much for the fundraising, the phone calls, the postcards, the door knocking. Everything truly matters. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, and next we're going to hear from Gareth Fenley. And Gareth ran, or was running for Senate District 46. And I think the thing that's so exciting, this is the first time she ran, and in this area, I don't think that a Democrat had run before. So I was excited when I saw the numbers. I was like, go Gareth, But Gareth is a professional social worker, entrepreneur, and community volunteer. She brings service, integrity, and courage to everything she does. She's been an active member of Necessary Trouble for years. And we're just excited that she ran in this election, and she's going to share some thoughts with us about this experience that she had in this election. Gareth?
Well, thank you, Karen, and thank you, everyone. I actually have a little slideshow that I made. So I'm going to show a few slides, and then I'm going to come back as your featured picture on the Zoom window. Let's see here. Okay. I hope you can see my slides now, can you?
Yes, yes.
Great. So I want to thank everybody for being here together. And I want to tell you that I am reaching for and touching the joy that I felt on the campaign trail, despite some despair that initially hit me. You, Necessary Trouble, helped me write 6,000 postcards, which were mailed all over my district. And thank you if you were one of the postcard writers or one of the donors or one of the helpers. I want to thank you so much. This is how many votes I got, 36,870 votes. That was 36% of approximately 101,000 votes. A big district because it was a state Senate district. So why did I do this? Why did I choose to run for state Senate against one of the most powerful politicians in the Georgia Gold Dome? Why did I do that? Well, here's some evidence-based wisdom. Competition on the ballot drives higher voter turnout. Higher turnout favors Democrats, and the more people vote, the more that progressive candidates and policies are favored. So I wanted to get in the mix and give some competition to this powerful man. I had 3 campaign goals. Here's the first one: boost Biden. Well, that got kind of updated, but originally I announced my candidacy when Joe Biden was our presidential candidate. And I wanted to drive turnout to help the top of the ticket, which became, of course, Kamala Harris, who I was even more excited about. My second campaign goal was to build the bench. I wanted to create opportunities for people in my region, which is majority Republican. It's very strongly a Republican powerhouse. I wanted to help people know they were not alone and develop opportunities where people could be developing skills and commitment in a Democratic campaign with the long game in mind, not just the season, but even looking into future seasons to build the bench. And then finally, to be boldly blue, to vibrantly shine with sustainable integrity, pride, and joy. I wanted to make sure that I was happy through this campaign and that I could do it. And even though I was facing almost certain defeat at the election day, that I would feel good and that I would not collapse into a nervous wreck anytime along the way. I am proud to announce that, as you may notice, I succeeded. So a look at this district. I'm just going to briefly take a look at this district where I have run, where I live. Where are we talking about? This is Northeast Georgia. There's a fancy word, exurban Atlanta. It's outside the suburbs. You get into the countryside and there's small towns, but it's developing. There's rapid development going on. They're putting up shopping centers and multifamily developments out here in the countryside. That's where I am. On the road to Athens. There's my house. This is a map of the Atlanta metro area. There's the perimeter. Here's what's usually considered the suburbs. And out here in Walton County, a lot of people don't consider ourselves to be anywhere near Atlanta. Culturally, we are quite distinct. But we are on the way to Athens, Georgia. A bright, vibrant blue community, home of the Bulldogs. Here are the maps. As you see here, until last year, this is what the district looked like. It included a little bit of Athens and then went all the way out. I live in Monroe, came out here into all this red country. And they redrew it. So this year I ran for the very first time in the newly redrawn district, just as everybody did. And this district was drawn to protect the Republicans, specifically my opponent, a man named Bill Cowsert. This is what it looks like. I had 5 counties. I had part of Athens, all of Oconee. Here's where I live in Walton County, a very, very red county, proud of its Confederate heritage. Oh, don't get me started. And then go up into Barrow County. This is Appalachia High School, where the mass shooting occurred. And over here to Gwinnett in Decula, a little corner of Gwinnett County that is a little bit more rural. And over here in Athens, Clark, another sensational crime occurred, the murder of Laken Riley. So both of those tragic and sensational, nationally attended to crimes occurred in my district. Big district. Talk about big. Takes a long time to drive between these points. So want to talk a little bit about Brian Kemp, a name you know. You may not know Bill Cowsert, you may. Brian Kemp is from Athens, and he originally held this seat. And then he became the Secretary of State and then became the governor. He is term limited. So 2026, he's moving on along. We don't know to what, but he's term limited. Bill Cowsert, my opponent, his brother-in-law, they are married to sisters. He's also a Republican lawyer from Athens. He's been in that seat since 2006. What's going to happen when Brian Kemp finishes his final term as governor? Many people speculate Bill Cowsert will run for governor, leaving an open seat. Interesting. Right now, he's got a lock on that seat, but leaving an open seat in 2026, let's think about it. So here are the election results. This is taken off the Secretary of State website. Cowsert won. Here are the 3 red counties in my district. As you can see, Cowsert prevailed right here where I live in Walton. Big victories. And then as you can see, I beat Bill Cowsert in Gwinnett County and Clark County. So I was very happy to see that, and I'm still analyzing a lot of numbers because I love to do things like that. I'm back. So what did I learn? I learned that I accomplished victory on every aspect of my goals. On every aspect of my goals, I accomplished victory. Will there be a next time? Yes. Yes, there will be a next time. And the next time will be harder. This time, I face the challenge of being a relatively unknown first-time candidate. And I only got 4 endorsements. I was happy to be endorsed by the Peach Power PAC, Georgia Equality, Moms Demand Action, and Georgia's Win List. My financial support was pretty small. I didn't work really hard to raise lots of money. And something that I learned is that I'm going to want to bring in more staff to help next time. And there will be a next time. I do intend to run for this seat in 2026, and I seek your support. I seek the support and endorsement of Necessary Trouble. I seek more financial support, more staff support, and I learned that I need to raise money early. I need to ask for endorsements early, and I need to ask consistently and assertively. I found that when I do that, when I ask for money and help, I'm quite successful, but I'd rather do something else, like go knock on some doors. I'd much rather go talk to some voters than ask people for money. But I enjoy the conversations with supporters as well. I have to think of it in that way. And I'm also going to continue enlarging my footprint in the community as a servant leader, and I am starting a new chapter of Indivisible. Indivisible Boldly Blue has had 2 meetings, one at my home and one online, and we're having another in-person meeting December 8th. So continuing my community organizing, continuing being known among the blue folks in this red area. And if you think about it, 36%, that's a lot of people. But when you come out here into this part of the country, a lot of people feel very isolated. They're afraid, they're fearful. They don't want to put up a sign. They don't want to have their neighbors know their livelihood and maybe their church membership and maybe their family vibes depend on them staying very low key. So I am boldly blue and proud to be so.
Gareth, thank you so much, Gareth. And we so appreciate everything that you've done to move our democracy forward. And as you begin to continue this effort, we just want to encourage you to go forth and go up and out. And know that we from Necessary Trouble will be here to support you. You know, that, like, as you said, starting this, at least I said, Gareth is going to run. You know, it's a little scary, but you did it. You made a great impact. Just the mere fact that you ran against all that money and got 36%, I was like happy, doing a happy dance. So again, thank you so much for what you have done, and we will be there to support you as you make your decision to become a servant leader at the state capitol. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now I'm going to turn this over to Pam Woodley, and she's going to talk a little bit more about other actions that we have taken. Thank you, Pam. Pam?
Yes. Hi, I was asked to report on the Fighting 50, and Gareth was an honorary member of the Fighting 50, a much beloved one. She is not a full-fledged member because our focus is Georgia House candidates running in red districts. And so Gareth gave a good overview of the reasons why these candidates run. They know they're not going to win, but they take on this really big job for the good of all of us Democrats statewide and nationwide. So all I have to report right now, one of our main goals in starting the Fighting 50 was that these candidates would be treated well. They would know that people appreciated what they were doing, and they would run again. Because every time I had been involved in recruiting for the Democratic Party for these red seats, these lower priority seats for a few terms, and my partner, Bob Herndon, in this, and I realized every year we were starting from scratch because none of them would run again because they had such a miserable experience and no one reached out and said, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing. That's so great. What can I do for you? And I think this time, almost all of them are running again. There's a couple that aren't, but they're still very positive. They want to help. You know, they want to continue to be involved. And they're trying to find a candidate to replace them. So, and yeah, a big part of that was, you know, all the postcards we all wrote for them. Again, I don't know how many postcards in total Necessary Trouble wrote, but I think there was about 8,000 for my Fighting 50 candidates. Not all Necessary Trouble. I did get a bunch of other groups involved, but still, stuff like that. I think that's all a big reason why they're running again, and there'll be so much better candidates the next time. So thank you all for that support.
Okay. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Karen. And for all of our guest speakers. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there, did anybody have a question or comment? No? Okay. Again, thanks everyone for this particular segment, the Fighting 50. We want to thank Pam, we want to thank Karen, and all of our guest speakers, Representative Clark and candidates Susie Greenberg and Gareth Fenley, for their time today and for the amazing work that they've done this year and in the upcoming years. Okay. At this point, I would like to introduce the facilitator for this next session, would be Pam Wouche. And Pam is going to talk about how amazing our volunteers are, what the numbers say, and what our volunteers say. So, Pam, are you there?
I
Pam?
am. Yes, I am here.
Okay, the floor is
And
yours.
very good. And thank you, Karen McCown, for bringing up the slideshow. And just as Becky had talked about an analysis in terms of the political landscape and what went right and what, just the results of the election and everything, we've heard a lot of things from the candidates as far as how much the troublers did. We thought it would be good to go ahead and do a quick analysis of just what quantify that and bring it up and really applaud it and such. So what we're going to do in this session is go through quickly some slides just to say what was done. And then we're going to have an open mic section. And in that, we'll talk about it when we get there, but we'll want to just hear from people in terms of what was meaningful about the work that you were doing and why did you do it. Heard from the candidates. Let's hear from our volunteers now. Before we get started, I wanted to go ahead and just remind people who are new to Necessary Trouble to put their name and their email address in the chat, just because I think there are a few people that have plugged in since we started here. So let's first start off with like some of our key volunteer activities and such. And by the way, well, anyway, we captured as much as we could. Please be aware that there's no way in the world we could capture everything that was going on. We have an amazing group and they were doing work everywhere. But in the phone banking, you will see almost 4,000 calls and such. Amy Carpenter and her small but mighty group of phone bankers and everything did more than 2,000 for Jasmine and almost 2,000 for Susie and such. Postcards, we've heard postcards mentioned multiple times here. Over 10,000 in total, for sure, between Susie and Jasmine and Gareth and the Fighting 50. And I'm going to bet it was even more than that here. So thanks so much to people who wrote them and also had postcard parties and everything. Canvassing. There you had almost 5,000 doors that were knocked. And amazing, you look at this and you're like, how can you be so specific? But we know that Karen McCown, who is running the slideshow and everything, does know all of these things because she set them up. 2,229 for Susie, 2,683 for Jasmine. Neighbor to Neighbor, which we heard from a few months ago in terms of a new indivisible program of going, and PJ, I know that you've been one of those participants in that, going neighbor to neighbor to just make sure that our fellow Democrats are actually aware of issues and everything and are getting out to vote. And so we had troublers that were active in that as well. Next slide. Fundraising and just how critical that is. Unbelievable to think that more than $38,000 was raised for Jasmine and Susie through a particular fundraiser, and that did not count other donations that individual troublers were making to them outside of that fundraiser and also to many other candidates. So a force. The voter protection team. This is something that I happen to have been the co-chair of the voter protection team with Leslie High. And there were so many people. This is harder to quantify because there were just so many elements to voter protection. But the research teams who formed and worked with the Democratic Party in terms of reaching out to all 159 county election offices on a regular basis to get key information, serving as liaisons with the county Democratic structures and everything, and helping them to organize volunteers and to liaise with those county election offices, rides to the polls, volunteering in terms of poll watching, ballot monitoring, ballot curing, hotline shifts, all sorts of things there. No lack of things. And most of the people that were involved did at least 2 or 3 of these activities. So thank you so much. The next one. And here, this is so key. We've heard so much this election cycle in terms of the state election board. And some of the things that were coming up way close to the election, too close to the election, and the DeKalb County Board of Elections and such. And so having troublers show up at those election board meetings, and not only showing up, but also taking the time to research and to do public comments that 3 of our troublers, and you can see some of them, Pam Woodley, and I think that's Betsy, yes, exactly, who were actually called upon to do comments during the public hearings, and then attending the monthly DeKalb Board of Election meetings as well here. And next. And then the signs. I loved it when Susie said there was a tsunami of signs and everything, and how, in fact, that happened just seemingly overnight and such, because, in fact, she called on them and then they got out. Here, have to recognize Lou and Pam Joy and everything, who were the leads in terms of the sign distribution, over 500 of them through the DeKalb Dems, and as we said, many more through for Susie and Jasmine's campaign in particular as well. So great job. And all of the allies, I'm sure we have some allies on the phone, on the line right now, but Marching Buddies, Avondale Action, the Progressive Salon, for postcarding, and then the DeKalb Dems, Karen Davenport, all you do and all the DeKalb Dems do. And so Karen gave us these statistics in terms of how the troublers helped with more than 250,000 phone calls, 75,000 doors, 18,000 postcards, and then volunteering at the coordinating campaign office. And I would also like to particularly count, I know a number of you who were precinct managers, poll workers during early elections, on election day, long days, and still taking time to do those postcards and all of those other things on top of that there. So just an amazing group. And then it comes, very well said, everything else you did, so much that was done by these campaigns. We cannot say how much was done in regard to this. And I apologize that I haven't called out all the leads and such on this. I thought if I started doing that, I'm going to miss somebody. And I know you know who you are. I know your teams know who you are. Appreciate your leadership and all of that. And what I would say is, I think we're done with the slideshow. Are we, Karen? I think, anyway, that in terms of, I hope that you will speak up now. We have not a lot of time, but some time and everything for people to kind of say, put your hand up, number one. We're going to go ahead and, before we do that, speaking of hands and everything, we've had applause and everything. I would like everybody to be unmuted so that we can say, what a great job. How many people? Just amazing.
Great job.
Bravo.
What a great
Bravo.
job.
Unbelievable.
Whoa.
Exactly.
A lot of volunteer
All
work.
right.
Great job.
Bravo. Give ourselves. And so great to hear from the candidates in terms of them knowing what a difference we made. What a great difference. So in terms of difference,
I did.
this little reaction thing that you can do on your
you didn't want to.
Pam, you're muted.
When we I didn't know I was going to get muted again. Anyway,
That's interesting.
as I was saying, I don't know where I was in this and everything, but if in fact you are now, except for me, muted at this point in time, but you can go ahead and use the little reaction button on the Zoom to put your hand up if in fact there's something that struck you as particularly meaningful about the work that you did and why it was meaningful to you, and you would just like to speak for, minute to minute and a half and everything on that. We would love to hear from you, and we would love to do that for as many as we can, because I think it's just something that it just brings to life everything that we made possible. So is there, and I can't see everyone, can I? If somebody can help me with I
Jennifer.
see.
Yeah,
Jen?
I just want to give a big thank you to, especially to Tara and Pam and to everybody. Finding the Troublers group was like the greatest thing that happened for me last year, or one of the greatest, aside from having grandchildren to be born. I'd say it ranks up to there. And I got to tell you, just knocking on doors, I was a little hesitant to do it at first, But boy, I got into a rhythm. I was trained by the best. Pam gave me a push, and we were out there, and just the conversations I had with people, it just brought me close to the ground and got me to feel such a sense, like the sports people say, I left it all out on the field. I feel like up until the last day, sign waving and canvassing with friends, we all should be very proud of what we did. And it confirmed for me the importance, the absolute importance of working at the state level. And I know we're going to turn Georgia blue, and you all are going to help do it. So I just want to thank you. I have no words. And especially now, it's helping me carry me through. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's fantastic here. We've heard from canvassers and such. Do we want to hear from postcarders or people who went to the SEB?
Did you see Jana,
Oh,
Pam?
I see Jana. I see Jana and Conrad. Hi, Conrad.
Yeah.
Jana?
I think that there's a great deal of camaraderie among people. And I think that was one of the real joys, even if the outcome was not what we wanted. And I think it was a wonderful opportunity of being able to, for those of us who were able to speak to the SEB, whether it be virtual or in person. And I think it's good prep for the next round, indeed. And I really want to salute everybody. I mean, having the Troublers has been a jewel in the crown of Georgia, even if not everybody knows about it. And I think that just seeing everybody, and then like particularly going around and doing the canvassing in different, always getting to see different neighborhoods, gave me a real illumination, just as it did in previous campaigns. And this time it was nice to be able to go to different neighborhoods and not see the numbers of homes that were either vacant or had signs on for foreclosure or other things, which did occur a couple campaign cycles before. And while people are worried about the economy, we're not seeing that this time. And I think that's a tribute to a lot of work at the national level as well as everybody else. That's all for me. Over.
Thank you, Conrad. That's fantastic. Appreciate your sharing. And I think, is it Tully or Tuli? Ghosh, if you could unmute yourself.
I'm Tuli Ghosh, and I'm new, first time troubler, but I've been with Indivisible for a long, long time. Indivisible GAO4, and then previously Indivisible Vermont. I had a question. I'm an academic, and that's my background. So I wanted to do a follow-up without it being punitive in any way. What I wanted to know is I did canvassing. I wrote 125 letters, 52 door knocks, and innumerable phone banking. So my question is it possible to go back to the doors, the homes where I did do the canvassing, and ask if they voted? That's all. I don't want to know which way they voted or anything, and not being punitive in any way, but I wanted to do a follow-up to see how effective door knocking is, essentially.
I appreciate the question, and I don't know the answer. So.
And maybe we could circle back, Tuli, offline and talk about it separately. I want to really welcome you. So glad you're here. And if you would make sure to put your email in the chat, and we'll email you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes. Hopefully there is a means to do that. So it's a great question. Michael Beach, if you would unmute yourself.
Hey, thanks. I just wanted to amplify what Conrad was saying, and that these state election boards and the county election boards are critical. And we need to have more folks like ourselves show up at the meetings in force, but also be willing to give public comment. And maybe the public comment is speaking to the press that are there because they're there every time. But I think it is critical that we balance the continually returning group of people that are proposing some really off base, wacky sorts of things and getting their way. And I think we have to balance that on a regular basis to make sure that, post-election, we don't lose faith. We continue to show up and show them that there is going to be resistance to this. And I'd like to kind of, as a group, start to think about how we can start to actually be participatory in this process. I would like to, and I think we need lawyers, I would like to start actually submitting some proposals for rule changes to start to think about reinforcing some of the 90-day periods where you don't make changes and those sorts of things. Why can't we do the same thing? We shouldn't just cede to the mega group that's actually showing up on a regular basis. Let's start talking about, as far as strategy in that, can we participate and start to really drive some change there, hopefully, as well. Thanks.
I love that. I love this, that we're talking about both what it is that we have done and also what it is that we still need to do or could do as a group and such. So with that in mind, Viola, if you would unmute yourself.
I think I am, yes. I just wanted to follow up on the camaraderie and the community that I think all of our efforts built. I think this community is vital as we go ahead and go forward trying to be a strong opposition, which of course we need to be now. So I was glad to hear about this camaraderie, which I think is a powerful tool. We have a real community and we can go forward with that. And I know Georgia here is way ahead with the Fighting 50. I heard Howard Dean say, what needs to be done now is that we have to find candidates to run in all those unopposed positions on the local levels. And I think I said, good, we already are on that way. And that made me feel good. So let's carry on with that. I think that's really, really, really where our strength will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Viola. You are absolutely right. We draw strength from one another here. And with that, Cheryl, if you would unmute yourself.
Oops. Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Level my hand, get me out the way. I would just like to follow up on the gentleman who talked about the state election boards and I listened to that first, but also the DeKalb County election board. And I hope and I like that idea of going forward. I went to 3 of them, the 3 that I've gotten the information from you all. I spoke at all 3 of them. That felt really good. I would have gone to those a long time ago if I had known that DeKalb County, thank goodness, has a 3-2 majority on that election board, but I thought it was like a 5-0 that majority. That was one wake up call. And if I'd have known that the first meeting I went to, it was like these 2 Republican people that got up and tried to take all these voters off the roll, and one was a real bully. One got up there right away and was like going to make sure he got to talk whether he signed up or not. But yeah, we have to keep we have to keep a watch over that. So I want to attend the rest of those. I like the idea of the attorney. I don't know how that would be. I know that would be like fundraising, but yes, because when I walked out of that first meeting I went to and I met somebody from the NAACP, they said, oh, those people had been coming, all those Republican people with their computer lists and everything had been coming all from the beginning of the year. So I think that's one of the things I never even dreamed I would be attending with doing election things. So thank you.
Well, as you say, lots to do and lots of interest here, which is great. Music to a lot of people's ears of attending some of these board meetings, because I understand that they can be trying here. So, but we have to show up. And then Marion, if you would unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted. I mean, I did different things during the election. You know, from fighting 50 to neighbor to putting stamps on postcards. But what I wanted to talk about is, and this has been, and it goes to what Michael was saying about strategizing. It seems to me that it's like, you know, they say sometimes the Democrats show up to a gunfight with a slingshot. And I think that we actually show up to a gunfight with cupcakes and ask them, do you want to join us in a little, you know, snack reaching across the aisle? And I have thought that if we had gotten somebody in the Republican counties, in red counties, to challenge, put together a list and challenge a bunch of voters, the legislature would have rescinded that. You know, it's like we need to, I think it's like our strategize, I'm just putting it out there. I think our strategizing needs to use their weapons against them in a sense. You know, the weapons are there. We're still bringing cupcakes to the gunfight. So that's just it for me. So
I think that's a very good comment to conclude on, and to sort of say, yes, what have we learned and how do we go forward? And that is still to be determined, and we will all be determining that moving forward. So we will look forward to that in January. I'll just simply say from my part that I joined, I think, in 2018, and I just find it invaluable in terms of just the information that we receive and the idea that there are avenues for doing something tangible, regardless of what that might be for each of us individually. So thank you very much for all of your support. And again, I think this calls for another round of applause, and then PJ, maybe you will close us out here. So.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. What a wonderful way to end the year. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our meeting for November, but I want to, first of all, since this is our last meeting, we got to take a rest. We're gonna come back in January, and we'll have a plan. We don't have one right now, but I must say that I'm more encouraged, okay, after today's meeting. I came to the meeting and I'm not really sure what space I was in, and even if I wanted to even be in a space. But I see now that yes, the data that we received, that was very informative as far as I'm concerned, because
Thank you. Yes.
you listen to the media, they're always talking about mandates, and he received this and he received that. But once we look at the data, it really, I mean, yeah, we lost, but there's a lot of factors and there's a lot of room for growth and for achievements going forward. I want to wish a happy holiday season to everyone. Thanksgiving is coming up. I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Hanukkah and all those good things that make us smile. And like I said, everybody get rest, and we're going to come back strong in January. But for my part, this has been a very grueling but wonderful experience. And the one thing I did a lot of the early voting, advanced voting, the one thing I can say this time, I had bought this bell for all the first time voters. And, I rang it until my arms were sore. I'm not sure that I knew if I was ringing it for the other side. Okay. But either way, people have been involved. People got involved this time. People got concerned. So, and this was the kind of election where concern is needed. Okay, so we live to fight another day. I mean, that's really all I can say. Um, our next meeting will begin again in January, January 12th. I think that's the date for our next meeting. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Becky. And Becky, you're going to lead us out with our closing song.
I am, PJ, and thank you so much. And let me also add to what PJ said, which is this is everybody's tired, and I hope everybody gets really good rest before January. And when I was trying to figure out what was the song, I'm going to go back to a song that we play from time to time with Necessary Trouble, and it is a favorite. And it feels like one thing I mentioned to some folks last night is that we in Necessary Trouble tend to rely on two pillars, and one is the pillar of work and one is the pillar of love. And this feels like a really good time to lean into love. So let me share my screen and play a song to take us out.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow. If we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. Oh, it won't be long. You're gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride. If I have things you need to borrow, no one can fill those are your needs that you won't let show. You just call on your brother when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. You just might have a problem that you don't understand. We all need somebody to lean on.
we go. Well, can we just one more time, can we just come all off mic, all off mute, and just give a big hoot and holler for all the work that Necessary Trouble has done in the last year? Thank you, Necessary Trouble.
Thank you.
Woo!
Thank you,
Happy
guys.
New Year, everybody.
Yes.
That's
Thank you.
right. Rest
Thank
up
you.
for next year. 2025 is a big year.
Yeah.
Get
Okay.
resourced.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Lots of
Bye.
information. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gareth.
Becky,
Yes.
have you
Viola.
looked at the 30-page strategic package that the Indivisibles have put together?
You know, we have it printed out and we sat in on their hour-long national conversation about it.
Yeah.
And it was really exciting to us,
Amazing.
Viola.
Right.
It
I
was
do too.
really exciting. And we have been, you know, lots of folks know that we've been frustrated with Indivisible for a long time because they have been so focused on only national. And finally, man, they are with us. They are county, they are local, they are work where you got leverage. And honestly, we got leverage. We got a hell of a lot more leverage at the county and state level than the
We do,
national.
indeed, yeah.
So it was exciting. It's the first time that I have felt thrilled by the work that Indivisible is doing.
Really? Yeah. Okay. Well, I was impressed. I have not actually worked my way through that package yet, but
yeah.
I've got to print it out also
Yeah.
in order to take my time with it. So
It was
I
a
think
really good,
there's a
it was a
lot
real,
in there that we can use, right?
yes, I think so too. And their national call was great. It was like fantastic,
It was
finally.
amazing.
Finally.
I also liked in fact, the message they sent out today said what all they have accomplished in this last 10 days, right? The
Yeah.
one on Tuesday, the one on Thursday, and so
Yeah.
it's amazing. And I think we need to see that. We need to see
Yeah.
whether there are some results possible.
Yeah.
And anyway, but I also thank you for the data. That was very helpful. And I look forward to the recording to look at those.
Yeah. The data is reassuring to me, actually.
Yes,
You
it
know,
was.
makes me
It was
feel
amazing.
less like we're in free fall.
Exactly. It was very helpful and very consoling. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
consoling is a
Even
good
though
word.
it's figures, but still.
Yeah. But it is interesting to start really thinking about where we do have power.
Yeah.
You know, we got power in DeKalb County, Karen Davenport. You know, we got power in DeKalb County. We got power in Lorraine Cochran Johnson. We got power in Jasmine Clark and our Democratic. We're not so far. You know, we got some muscle in the house.
Right. And I think the things that Gareth is and Jasmine,
That's right.
is we have to be about it all the time.
That's right.
Not
That's
just
right.
during the election periods. And
Yeah.
I so appreciate
there are things in North Carolina, as you know, we've got the governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, and the secretary of state, all Democrat.
Wow.
Even though North Carolina went for Trump, but the entire upper echelon is all solidly Democrat and fantastic people too. So that was reassuring.
That's really
and the
interesting.
school board. And the school board.
Great.
Anyway, thanks for a lovely, reassuring meeting, and I hope everyone gets rest, as has been said. And
we'll all rest up.
Let's celebrate too. Okay.
Yes. Bye, you guys.
Bye-bye.